You guys know I'm big into crypto, and America, because of Trump, is going to be the crypto capital of the world. We're going to revamp our financial system pronto. I feel like we're about to go from, people using stones and bartering chickens and cows to getting, like gold, silver, and bronze. Now we have rupees and dollars and won and yen and all of that. Now we're about to go to crypto and have Bitcoin, Solana, XRP, Ethereum. I genuinely think that. Yaps. It's in the name. Okay, boys, it seems like the American markets are back on. They're going to turn on the money printing machines. And while I think in the long run, this may not be the best thing, but for my bags right now, this could be a generational thing. And I'll explain that as we go on. But let's see what our friend here, Graham, has to say.
What's up, you guys? It's Graham here, and I hope you're prepared for what just happened. As of a few hours ago, the Federal Reserve completely flipped their entire outlook on the economy, inflation, and most importantly, your money, to the point where pretty soon we could see, dare I say it, rate cuts coming a lot sooner than expected.
Rate cuts allow it to be easier for money to be loaned out, thus allowing people to actually be able to go to the bank, get money, and do shit in their life, and thus make money, because y'all know you gotta spend money to make money.
After all, there's now the concern that the jobs market could be in more trouble than we thought. They might have just admitted that above 2% inflation could never go away, and instead of doubling down, the money printer is preparing to turn back on. And we all know what that means. That's why we have to talk about what Jerome Powell just said, the shocking new information he just revealed, and the impact this is about to have on your entire portfolio. Because even though the market is turning wildly profitable, there are some issues to watch out for if you're not careful. Although before we start, I do appreciate the last-minute breaking news videos like this where I drop everything to get this out as soon as possible. It would mean the world to me if you hit the like button or subscribe if you haven't done that already. It means more of a difference than you could imagine, and as a thank you for doing that, here's a picture of a squirrel. So thanks so much, and also a big thank you to Cook Unity for sponsoring this video, but more on that later. Alright, so in terms of what's going on, and why the Federal Reserve was just throwing a massive economic curveball that frankly changes everything, let's talk about declining jobs. In this case, here's the thing. Even though most people think the Federal Reserve's only job is to protect your portfolio from falling more than 20%, in reality, they're what's known as a central bank, whose entire goal is to oversee our economy, regulate financial institutions, and control the amount of money that goes into and out of our system.
What's crazy to me is that if this is America, they act outside of it. Like, even though the president appoints, who's the head of this, they operate like outside of traditional American laws and regulation. It's very weird. It's interesting.
Their priority over everything else is to make sure that the United States has a strong labor market, we maintain maximum levels of employment, and in doing so, they could regulate financial markets in such a way that moves us away from record high inflation. Except for that jobs part, because everything there is going to Why? Well, a few weeks ago, we got a complete shock to the entire market. Instead of adding 300,000 jobs like we expected, it turns out that was a complete mistake, and instead, we gained just 73,000 jobs.
But we lost like 89,000, so it was like a net negative of like 19,000 jobs.
Seriously. In reality, these headline job growth numbers that we see are at first estimates based on surveys and limited data from large firms. Then as they collect more information, those numbers are revised to reflect a more accurate data point.
I hate how it's done because it's just basically done off projections. Like, yeah, this is what everything should be. Here you go, report off that. And then you get it back in and you're like, yo, this is nothing of what they said. And you're like, well, I don't know what to say. It's like there's no accountability on that. And it's like we've already seen, whether it be in political elections, whether it be in science and other areas, like these experts who put these graphs and charts and reports together, they got the same info as you and me most oftentimes than not. And it's like, man, they're just, it's crazy that they're so wrong, right? Like they're supposed to be experts in this field and they're wrong more times they are right. And then when you criticize them or you call it out, they get offended. It's like, you would think with these high positions, you would get high level, high IQ people in there. And with that, the you would mitigate the amount of errors that are done, and it just doesn't feel like that because at the end of the day, we're all just humans.
Except this time, they were off. By a lot. Now, part of this, they say, is due to the fact that response rates have dropped significantly over the last decade, accelerating after the pandemic, and therefore it raises concerns about reliability. So even though Trump has previously said that this data is all rigged, the truth is revisions like this happen all the time, practically every single month. Although revisions of this magnitude reflect a very quickly changing economy that's not fully able to account for tariffs, low and late survey responses, and seasonal adjustments that made this an unexpected shock to the entire market and throwing everyone off guard. However, the good news, weirdly enough when it comes to this, is that the weaker the jobs market is, the more likely we are to see future rate cuts, which is really good for stocks and is probably going to make you a lot of money. And in terms of what Jerome Powell just said, oh, you better get ready for this. First of all, it's important to mention that usually the Federal Reserve doesn't just act out unpredictably. It's not in their best interest to shock the markets or make moves that people can't reasonably adjust to. Because of that, they'll typically signal their intentions ahead of time to give people enough room to plan. And this time, their signal is very clear. They're expecting rate cuts. Now, even though our economy is overall healthy, with a relatively low unemployment rate, all things considered, Jerome Powell admitted that the downside risks are rising, and as a result, he said the conditions allow us to proceed carefully as we consider changes to our policy stance. In other words, he's alluding to the fact that they might have to pivot from, we're not lowering interest rates until tariff uncertainty is resolved.
In all honesty, this guy is the guy who's in charge of it all. This is his last year. He's out sometime next year, and I think behind the scenes, there's just like this transition of like, you guys know I'm big into crypto, and America, because of Trump, is going to be the crypto capital of the world. We're going to revamp our financial system pronto. I feel like we're about to go from, people using stones and bartering chickens and cows to getting, like gold, silver, and bronze. Now we have rupees and dollars and won and yen and all of that. Now we're about to go to crypto and have Bitcoin, Solana, XRP, Ethereum. I genuinely think that. And this was a part of the old guard, and he's out next year, right? So I think behind the scenes, they're just kind of like, all right, look, you got to pave the way, at least open some of the doors for this to come in.
To today,
that's what it feels like for me.
Require them to lower rates
me
a lot
being the internet degenerate that I am.
This is completely different from what they said a few weeks ago prior to the jobs numbers, where they strongly resisted rate cuts, despite Trump's demand to lower them as aggressively as possible. However, in terms of Trump and whether or not the president has any impact whatsoever on their upcoming decision, Jerome Powell reassures everyone that the Federal Reserve is completely independent of any government agency.
You see what I'm saying?
Decisions will be based solely on the assessment of the data and its implications for the economic outlook and the balance of risks. Of course, in terms of these choices, keep in mind that Jerome Powell is not the only decision maker, and it's not like he could just wake up one morning and say, you know what guys, I actually feel like a 50 basis point rate cut today. That sounds pretty nice. Instead,
it kind of feels that way, though. I'm not going to lie. It's set up to where he's not allowed to do that, but it kind of feels like that.
It's voted on between 7 Federal Reserve board members and 5 regional board members. That way, one person doesn't have complete control of everything. Although speaking of one person, there is a Fed board member who could potentially be on the chopping block to get replaced by somebody that Trump appoints, and that would be Lisa Cook. Here's a high-level overview of what's going on. We all know that Trump wants as many rate cuts as soon as possible as he could get, but he can't do that without really overstepping his boundaries. However, by law, a president does have the right to remove Federal Reserve board members for cause, which is generally interpreted as an inefficiency, neglect of duty, or malfeasance, which in this case appears to target Lisa Cook. Why? Well, it's alleged that in 2021, she named 2 different properties as her primary residence on loan applications. Of course, Lisa responded by saying that I do intend to take any questions about my financial history seriously as a member of the Federal Reserve, and so I'm gathering the accurate information to answer any legitimate questions and provide the facts. Essentially, one side says that Trump is trying to intimidate the Federal Reserve by finding any dirt he can and then trying to get them removed so that he could appoint his own people.
You guys know I'm pretty pro-Trump. Do I think Trump's doing that? Absolutely. I definitely think that is par for the course for Trump. What's more, New Yorker in real estate probably ran into the mafia, maybe runs the mafia. I don't know, but he is gangster, and he definitely would get involved in some bully tactics. Absolutely. So, do I approve of that? No, I really don't like that at all, to be honest. But can I see him doing that? Yep.
Well, the other side says that these are all legitimate concerns, and regardless of everything else, we should lower interest rates for the sake of our economy. Although in terms of the largest change from Jerome Powell and the shocking new shift that is going to impact pretty much everything, here's what you came for. Although before we go into that, it's no surprise we spent a lot of time analyzing the economy, the Federal Reserve, and the numbers that impact all of our financial
not slept too
futures.
well, Graham.
But the reality is, the best cut you could do is cutting out wasted time and eating unhealthy throughout your day. For instance, I've started to realize that your health needs to take priority. Like usually for days like today, I'm working nonstop, I'm doing everything I can to get this video out on time, and I'm skipping meals or doing whatever it takes just to post.
So make sure you guys go outside, get your fitness in. Maybe you go for a run, you do some push-ups, some squats. If you guys follow me on Instagram, I try to keep up my fitness stuff there. I'm a big believer in fitness, and I genuinely believe that the human body is like a battery, and if you let it overcharge, you don't get enough of that juice out, you start building up things like anxiety and depression and bad habits, and inner demons start winning, and because you lose the ability to have discipline, to take control of your life and grab that shit by the horns and ride it like a goddamn cowboy.
That's why I've started getting fresh, pre-packaged meals delivered on a regular basis, and it's been incredible. I feel better, I work better, and if you want a major food life hack that could actually wind up saving you a lot of money, it's all thanks to our sponsor, CookUnity. For those unaware, CookUnity is the first chef-to-consumer platform delivering.
I'm just gonna say, I know my demographic. I don't think they ship to India, guys. I'm sorry.
Delivering freshly prepared meals right to your door weekly. It's literally as close as you could get to having a private chef without actually paying for a private chef.
That looks like my dinner
Plus,
tonight.
when I actually broke down the cost of each meal, it was cheaper than what I was buying at Chipotle, which is insane. Not to mention, picking out your meals is super easy and effortless. Just choose a subscription plan and select from hundreds of meals each week prepared by award-winning chefs. All the meals are delivered fully cooked, so all you have to do is heat them up, and lunch or dinner is done in as little as a few minutes with no planning or cleanup required. Even better, the subscription is super flexible, with options of 4 to 16 meals a week. It's commitment-free, and you can skip, pause, or cancel at any time with the click of a button. If you want some recommendations, I personally loved the roasted salmon and lobster sauce by Chef Andre Mendez, mustard-crusted salmon by Luda Lefebvre, and crispy tilapia over Greek salad by Chef Ruben Garcia. So if you want to try it out and give it a shot, just go to cookunity.com/Graham and use the code GRAHAM50 at checkout to get 50% off of your first order. At that price, it's just too good of a deal not to take advantage of. So go ahead and do it. Let me know what you think. Thanks so much, and now let's get back to the video.
For sure, 50% off is good, but realistically, unless you're kind of balling out, I feel like the only time to really use those is like if you're going on vacation. And like you're going to spend money going out so much on vacation that it kind of makes sense to have like a bulk of just good, healthy meals and then only go out like one meal on that vacation instead of for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But that's here nor there. Back to the American economy booming so my crypto bags can pump and I can, I don't know, maybe go to India and see some of y'all. I don't know, have a bomb-ass vacation, do some shit in my life, like pay some bills.
All right, now in terms of what Jerome Powell just said, we need to talk about the most shocking revelation from all of this, and that would be what's called flexible average inflation targeting. Look, it's no surprise the Federal Reserve's entire goal is just to get inflation to return back to its 2% target without completely destroying the US economy in the process. And in terms of why they want 2% specifically, the answer is it's completely made up. Yes, that's right. This entire 2% inflation target was the result of an offhand remark in the 1990s from New Zealand, who said that they want to target 1% inflation, and then they bumped it up to 2% to give them a margin of error. And then we copied that because why not? You can actually go and look this up for yourself. There's very little economic data behind the 2% inflation rate other than we just agreed with them. Anyway, the expectation here is that inflation wouldn't be so low that it would cause people to hoard their money, but it wouldn't be so high so as to erode everyone's savings accounts into nothing. And that is why the Fed has been aiming for a rather consistent target to reach. Except recently, as of today, they've begun to change their stance. Here's how this works. As you can see, prior to 2020, inflation mostly remained under 2%, and from 2014 to 16, inflation was practically zero. At that time, the Fed's entire goal was to try to hit 2% in a year, and if they didn't do that, they'd try to hit 2% the next year. Each year basically just reset. Then in 2020, they came up with the makeup strategy. In this case, they rationalized that if we've been under 2% inflation for a long time, it's okay to run higher than 2% because that eventually makes up for the lack of inflation previously and it should all balance out in the long run. Well, today Jerome Powell admitted that there was nothing strategic about the makeup strategy, and in fact, it proved to be harmful for the economy. That is why today they're implementing a new policy, and that would be flexible average inflation targeting minus the makeup policy. In this case, the Federal Reserve says that we're still going to be targeting a 2% inflation rate, but we're going to be flexible with it. So if it runs higher than 2% for a while, that's going to be fine. If it runs lower than that, that's going to be fine too. It just depends on the situation. Essentially, this allows the Federal Reserve the option to keep inflation above 2% without keeping interest rates at a restrictive territory. And this is bullish for the economy, as we're seeing. Basically, as long as this doesn't get out of control, above 2% inflation could theoretically become the new normal. All of this now gives us the chance of an almost 90% certainty of a rate cut on September 17th. And in terms of whether or not this is going to be good for the economy, here's what you need to know. As far as why we should get a rate cut, number one, the jobs market is declining. Really, with 70,000 jobs added in July, there's the concern that the labor market could actually be in some serious trouble, and rate cuts would help stimulate more growth. Two, Trump says that a rate cut would save the government almost $1 trillion a year. In this case, our interest rates have a very close correlation to how much we pay on the national debt, and if our interest rates were to go down, it could potentially save us a lot of money. And three, some argue that over the last year, inflation's already pretty much bottomed out. As you could see, inflation has remained below 3% over the last 12 months, and even though we've seen a bit of an increase, Trump argues that it's really not that bad, and we should preemptively cut interest rates before everything goes to shit. However, others disagree and believe it's dangerous to cut rates at a time where everything is near an all-time high. Like, consider this. One, wholesale inflation is going back up. This is what's known as the Producer Price Index, or basically what businesses pay for the cost of materials that eventually gets passed on to the consumer. And last month it was found that prices increased 0.9%. Way more than expected. Now two, even though inflation is for the most part low, there is a chance it's picking back up. For instance, inflation rose 0.2% month over month, which if that continues is still above their flexible target of 2%. Three, the labor market is still really strong. Typically, the Federal Reserve lowers interest rates in response to mass unemployment or distress within the jobs market. But that's still currently near a record low at just 4.2%, signaling that our economy is at a good point. And four, we have tariff concerns. Jerome Powell personally said it himself. They were going to lower interest rates, but held off because of tariff uncertainty. However, today he admitted that tariff inflation could only be temporary, so we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, in terms of what's happening next and the impact this could have on our entire economy, here's what I think. Overall, this is rather optimistic for the economy. Like Jerome Powell saying that he's flexible on inflation means that they no longer have to keep interest rates higher than needed if everything else is otherwise okay. And it does look as though he's hinting at a rate cut as soon as September comes. However, yeah, I do admit it's a little worrisome that they're cutting interest rates while stocks, housing, and cryptocurrencies near an all-time high. And this
It is interesting, but I feel like everything is just close to an all-time high because the sentiment around the market is that it's a loaded handgun and it's about to be shooted up, and that's going to be the trajectory of everyone's freaking bags. That's what everyone's so hyped about, and that's why I think everything's like getting close to its all-time high again, because it's like, okay, we're about to break through the roof and make new all-time highs. At least I'm on that bandwagon.
Could spark another round of asset price increases, although if you're invested, yeah, this could be pretty optimistic for you and your portfolio. Let me know what you think of this down below in the comments section. I will do my best to read and reply to as many of you as I can since I...
So let's find out. What do people have to say here? If you don't already own a home now, say goodbye to that dream. Oh, I disagree. I think if interest rates are cut, it's going to be easier to get a house. I think. As a 21-year-old, 22, this response makes me feel super shaky. I mean... Yeah, I can't imagine. Like, I'm 30 and I don't own a home, so I can't imagine a 25, like someone turning 21 right now looking at homes here in America. It's insane. As a fellow personal looker, I have to say how impressive it is to turn into the video within a few hours. Okay, this guy's just like doing it himself. I'm exhausted. Food prices high, credit card interest rates high, gas prices high, mortgage rates high, housing high. Something has to give. Yes, let that be the ceiling on our bags, pup. Housing will give first. I sure hope so. And actually, I kind of think so, because especially with all the people leaving this country and it kind of balancing out to everyone who needs to be here. I think we should see a bump in that. Everything just feels overly expensive these days. Absolutely. Have we stopped inflation yet? No. Well, it's worth a shot. Print another 69 mega gazillion dollars. I mean, that definitely kind of is the game plan. I'm on the impression we need to leave interest rates high and stop the money printer at the top. What happens when the money printer goes brrr, and then all big wigs get as much money and they want the little guys left behind holding the bag? You got to learn how to rotate your bags. Why do I smell stagflation? I've lived through the 1970s and this is setting up to be worse. Interesting. Here comes stagflation, where the prices are too high and no one has any money anyways. That's what I'm worried about. Okay, that's true. Money printer go brrr. Thanks for an easy understand breakdown in today's news. I'm just gonna keep dollar cost averaging. Love what you do, Cram. Yep. And if you guys don't know, this is just an investment strategy where every day you put $1 into a stock, and by the end of that year, you have $365 minimum, maybe not minimum, but invested into that. And ideally, you know, it's growing 5, 8, 10, 15% year on year, and you just get that compound effect. That way you're right in the market when it's high, you know, you're not getting as much, but when it's low, you're getting a lot more, and you just kind of average it out. And then you have to learn how to like rotate. Like if there's a big day that you get like, I don't know, 10%, you maybe take 10% out, wait for it to drop 10%, you put the 10% back in, boom, you're just kind of rotating your money and making it grow and kind of work for you, you know. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you guys think. What do you guys think as non-Americans? If the American economy goes brrr, I feel like that's good for the global economy, because America's consumer economy fuels the world. But let me know what you guys think. As always, I challenge you, make somebody laugh today. Be the light in someone's life, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.